Wine dripped down my $3,000 dress like blood from a fresh wound. Vanessa smirked as she set the empty glass on the table. Her voice cut through the stunned silence of 30 guests. "Now you look as cheap as you really are." Her mother, Helen, beamed with pride from across the room. She actually started a slow, quiet clap. My son David suddenly found his phone fascinating. He stared down, his thumb scrolling, refusing to look up. This was my 64th birthday party. It had started 3 weeks earlier. David called with what he claimed was wonderful news. His voice was flat, devoid of any real enthusiasm. "Mom, we're throwing you a surprise party. Vanessa insisted. She's been planning it for weeks." Vanessa insisted. That should have been my first red flag. In 8 years of marriage to my son, my daughter-in-law had never insisted on anything that benefited me. But I was still naive, still clinging to the hope that she might have grown a heart. The party was at their house. My house, actually. The one I'd signed over to them 3 years ago when Robert died. "To help with the mortgage, Mom," David had said. "Just temporarily, until we get back on our feet." That temporary arrangement had become surprisingly permanent. I arrived fashionably late, wearing the navy silk dress I'd bought for the occasion. $3,000 seemed excessive, but Robert had left me comfortable, and I wanted to look elegant. I thought this was a celebration. The first hour went smoothly enough. Neighbors, a few old friends, David's colleagues from the accounting firm. Everyone complimented my dress. The catering was decent. I actually started to relax. That's when Vanessa made her move. She'd been watching me all evening with those calculating green eyes, waiting for the perfect moment. It came during David's toast. Everyone's attention was focused on his rambling, generic speech about family and gratitude. "Let me get you some more wine, Margaret," she said sweetly. She approached with a full glass of Cabernet, wearing that smile I'd learned to distrust. I should have seen it coming. The way she positioned herself, the angle of her approach, the theatrical stumble that was nothing of the sort. She didn't trip. She pivoted. She brought the glass up and deliberately inverted it, sending the entire contents cascading down the front of my dress. "Oh my goodness, I'm so clumsy," she gasped, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I'm so sorry, Margaret." Her eyes weren't sorry. They were triumphant. That's when she delivered the line that changed everything. She leaned in close, the smell of her perfume mixing with the sour wine. "Now you look as cheap as you really are." She said it quietly, meant only for me. But in the sudden silence that followed the spill, her words carried further than she'd intended. I saw faces change, sympathy turning to shock, then to uncomfortable embarrassment. Helen Roberts, her mother, actually clapped. A slow, measured clap, clap, clap of approval. David looked up from his phone just long enough to mumble, "These things happen, Mom. It's just a dress." Just a dress. Standing there, soaked and humiliated, I realized something crucial. This wasn't an accident. This was a performance, a deliberate act of cruelty staged in front of witnesses to maximize my shame. And my son's only response was to minimize it, to protect her. I excused myself to the bathroom. I didn't try to clean the dress. It was ruined. I just stared in the mirror. Vanessa wanted me to look like a foolish old woman who didn't know her place, but something else stared back at me from that mirror, something I hadn't seen in years. Anger. Pure, clean, crystalline anger. When I returned to the party, Vanessa was holding court near the dessert table, regaling a group with an animated story. She glanced at me as I approached, her face arranged in a mask of pity, expecting to see defeat. She saw something else. She took an involuntary step back. "Thank you for the party," I said clearly. My voice carried across the room. It was very illuminating. I gathered my purse. I walked straight to my son. I kissed his cheek, a cold press of lips against his skin. He flinched. I walked out without another word. Behind me, I heard the whispers starting up. What did she say? Did you hear that? Helen clapped. Good, let them talk. As I drove home, still wearing my wine-stained dress, I was already planning. Vanessa thought she'd won. She thought she'd put me in my place. She had no idea what she'd actually done. She'd awakened something that had been sleeping for far too long. And now that I was awake, I was going to remind everyone exactly who Margaret Thompson really was. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. I spent the next morning researching dry cleaners, anything to avoid thinking about what had really happened. But by noon, I couldn't hide from the truth. My son's wife had deliberately humiliated me, and he had done nothing. The doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw David shifting nervously, holding a bouquet of wilted grocery store flowers. I opened the door. "Hi, Mom," he said. "I brought you these, to apologize for last night." I didn't move aside. "For what, exactly?" He looked confused. "The wine thing. Vanessa feels terrible about it." "Does she? That's interesting. What exactly does she feel terrible about? The clumsiness or the comment?" David's face went blank. What comment? He really hadn't heard it, or he was pretending. With David, it was sometimes hard to tell the difference. "Come in," I said finally. "We need to talk." I made coffee. He sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd helped him with homework, where we'd planned his college applications, where we'd grieved his father. "David," I said, setting down his mug, "how much money have you borrowed from me since Robert died?" The question caught him off guard. "What? Mom, I don't know. Why?" "Roughly. Give me a ballpark figure." He shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know. Maybe 15, 20,000. It was all legitimate stuff. The transmission on Vanessa's car, the new roof, that plumbing issue." $47,000, I said quietly. The number hung in the air. 326 to be precise, in 22 months. "That can't be right," he said. His voice lacked conviction. I pulled out the folder I'd prepared that morning. I'd been up since 4 a.m., bank statements, copies of checks, wire transfer receipts, all laid out in chronological order, with running totals highlighted in yellow. $47,326, I repeated. And that's not counting gifts, Christmas, birthdays. I separated those. This is just loans, money you promised to pay back. He stared at the papers, his face growing pale. I flipped to another section. "Care to guess how much you've actually repaid?" He didn't answer. "Zero," I said. "Nothing, not $1. The silence stretched. Finally, David looked up. Are you asking for it back?" "I'm asking why your wife thought it was appropriate to humiliate me in front of 30 people when I've been subsidizing your lifestyle for almost 2 years. She was embarrassed about the accident," he insisted. "Sometimes she says things she doesn't mean when she's flustered." I almost laughed. "David, she told me I looked as cheap as I really am. That wasn't an accident, that wasn't embarrassment, that was malice, pure and simple." Vanessa wouldn't say something like that. There it was. The automatic defense. The refusal to see what was right in front of him. I'd raised him to be a good husband. I just hadn't realized he'd extend that loyalty to everyone except his mother. "She did say it," I said calmly, and Helen applauded her for it. "Helen wasn't even near you when the wine spilled." "No, but she was close enough to hear what Vanessa said, and instead of being horrified, she looked proud." David stood up, abandoning his coffee. "I think you misunderstood what happened. Vanessa is upset about the whole thing. She sent me here to apologize and to see if you wanted her to pay for dry cleaning." "How generous of her." "Mom, don't be like this." "Like what? Like someone who expects basic respect from her family?" He had no answer for that. He just grabbed his keys and left the flowers wilting on the counter. After he left, I sat alone with my financial records, $47,000, nearly a quarter of Robert's life insurance. Money I'd given freely because I thought I was helping my son. But looking at it now, I saw the pattern. Small emergencies at first, then larger renovations. The kitchen alone was $18,000. granite countertops, and professional-grade appliances that Vanessa had to have. My kitchen still had the original laminate counters from 1987. I pulled out my laptop. If Vanessa thought $47,000 bought her the right to humiliate me, she was about to learn how expensive that privilege really was. It was time to find out exactly who Vanessa Bradley really was. I started with the basics: social media, public records. Amazing what you could find online when you knew where to look. By dinner time, I had a clearer picture, and it wasn't the sweet, struggling professional she'd pretended to be. First discovery: Vanessa had been married before, twice. Her first marriage lasted 18 months. It ended when husband number one, a city council member in Tennessee, filed for divorce citing financial impropriety. The court documents were sealed, but the local newspaper had covered it. Allegations of unauthorized credit card use and forged documents, the article read. No criminal charges were filed as part of the settlement, but the councilman declared bankruptcy 6 months later. Husband number two lasted 2 years, a restaurant owner in Ohio. Vanessa left him, posting on Facebook about needing space to grow as a person, complete with inspirational sunset photos. What she didn't post about was the restraining order he'd filed 3 months after their separation, or the fact that she'd maxed out 4 credit cards in his name. He declared bankruptcy a year after the divorce. By the time she met David, she'd perfected her act. A recent widower, financially comfortable, emotionally vulnerable. I'd been so grateful when David started dating again after losing his first wife, Sarah, to cancer. So relieved when he seemed happy. Looking back, I should have wondered why she had so few friends, why her family rarely visited, why she was so eager to become part of our tight little unit. She wasn't joining our family, she was targeting it. The doorbell interrupted my research. Through the window, I saw Vanessa's silver Honda. I considered not answering, but curiosity won. She stood on my porch wearing a perfectly contrite expression and carrying a pink bakery box. She was dressed down in jeans and a simple sweater, the picture of casual sincerity. "Margaret, I'm so glad you're home," she said, offering the box. "I brought your favorite cookies from that bakery downtown, the chocolate chip ones." They weren't my favorites. I'd mentioned liking them once, maybe 2 years ago. "Thank you," I said. I accepted the box but didn't invite her in. "I wanted to apologize properly for last night," she continued, her voice soft. "I was mortified by the accident. I'm afraid I said some thoughtless things in my embarrassment. David told me you were upset, and I just felt terrible." "Thoughtless things," I repeated. "What exactly do you remember saying?" I asked. Her eyes flickered. "Honestly, I was so flustered. I can barely remember. Something about the dress, maybe? I felt awful." She was going to pretend she didn't remember, which meant she knew exactly how bad it sounded. "I remember quite clearly," I said mildly. "You said I looked as cheap as I really am." Her face crumpled. It was a good performance. Genuine distress. "Oh, Margaret, no. I would never say something so cruel. You must have misheard me in all the confusion." "Did I mishear your mother clapping?" That stopped her. For just a second, the mask slipped. I saw the calculation. "Mom gets excited at parties," she said finally. "She probably didn't even realize what was happening." "I see. Well, thank you for the cookies and the apology." I started to close the door. "Actually," she said quickly, putting a hand out, "I was hoping we could chat for a few minutes, clear the air properly. I'd hate for one awkward moment to damage our relationship." Our relationship? As if we'd ever had one. "I'm pretty tired today, Vanessa. Maybe another time." "Of course." She stepped back, still smiling. "I just want you to know how much David and I appreciate everything you do for us. You're such a generous mother-in-law." There it was, the reminder. My generosity was the price of admission. After she left, I opened the box. A dozen expensive cookies and a handwritten note. "For the sweetest mother-in-law in the world, love, Vanessa." I threw the note in the trash. If Vanessa wanted to play games about memory, I was happy to oblige. Tomorrow, I was going to have a conversation with Helen Roberts. Time to find out what kind of tree this apple fell from. Helen Roberts lived in a pristine subdivision where every lawn was edged to perfection. Her house was a colonial revival with white columns and black shutters. It whispered good family values and proper upbringing. I'd called ahead, claiming I wanted to discuss plans for David and Vanessa's upcoming anniversary. Helen had been delighted. "How lovely," she'd gushed. She met me at the door wearing a floral dress and pearls. She had the same bone structure as Vanessa, the same intelligence behind the warm smile. "Margaret, how wonderful to see you," she said, air-kissing my cheeks. Come in, come in. I've made cucumber sandwiches." The living room was decorated in shades of cream and gold, expensive but tasteful. "I was so sorry to hear about the little accident at your party," Helen said as she poured tea from a delicate china service. "Vanessa was quite upset." "Was she?" I accepted the cup. Bone china. She seemed to handle it well at the time. Oh, you know Vanessa, always trying to make the best of awkward situations. She gets that from me. We Roberts women believe in keeping a smile on our faces. "She is certainly good at maintaining composure," I agreed, even when saying things she might later regret. Helen's hand paused as she reached for a sandwich. "I beg your pardon?" At the party, after the wine spilled, I thought I heard her make a comment about my appearance, but perhaps I misunderstood. "Oh, I'm sure you did," Helen said smoothly. "Vanessa would never say anything unkind. She thinks the world of you." The lie came so easily. This was where Vanessa had learned her craft. "I'm sure you're right," I said. "It's just that a few other guests mentioned hearing something, and I noticed you seemed quite pleased. You were actually applauding." This time her hand stopped, sandwich suspended. I was applauding David's speech, of course, of such a lovely tribute. Was that before or after the wine spilled? I'm not sure I remember the exact sequence. It all happened so quickly. Liar. I set down my cup. "Helen, how well do you know your daughter's first two husbands?" The color drained from her face. What? Her first two husbands, James Bradley from Tennessee and Marcus Chen from Ohio. Surely she mentioned them. Helen's mouth opened and closed. I think there's been some misunderstanding." "Has there? Because the public records are quite clear. 2 previous marriages, both ending rather badly. Financial irregularities, bankruptcies, restraining orders. I found it fascinating reading." "I don't know what you think you've discovered," Helen said, her voice shaky. "But Vanessa's past is none of your business." "You're right, it wouldn't be. Except she's now married to my son and has borrowed nearly $50,000 from me in the past 2 years. Helen went completely still. 50,000? 47,326 to be precise. For emergencies, home improvements, none of which David mentioned to you, I'm guessing. They said they were financially stable. They are, because I've been subsidizing them." I pulled a folder from my purse. The other folder, the one with the loan records. "Would you like to see the receipts?" Helen stared at the folder like it was a snake. "What do you want, Margaret?" Finally, the mask was off. "I want to understand exactly who my daughter-in-law is and what role you've played in creating her." "Vanessa is a loving wife," Helen stammered. "She's made some mistakes." "Has she? Or has she just gotten better at choosing her targets?" Helen stood up abruptly. "I think you should leave." "Of course." I gathered my purse. "Thank you for the tea. It was very enlightening." As I reached the door, she called after me. "Margaret, whatever you think you know, she makes David happy. Isn't that what matters?" I turned back. She looked suddenly old, fragile in her perfect living room. "Helen, I raised David to be happy, but I also raised him to be honest, decent, and respectful. Your daughter is systematically destroying all three. So no, his happiness isn't all that matters anymore. I left her standing there. She was probably already reaching for her phone to call Vanessa. Good. Let them scramble. The call came at 6 a.m. sharp. David's voice was tight with anger. Vanessa had gotten to him first. Mom, we need to talk right now. I was already awake, sitting on my back porch with coffee and my laptop. Good morning to you too, sweetheart. Don't you dare act innocent. What the hell did you say to Helen yesterday? I had tea with your mother-in-law. We discussed family. You know exactly why. She called Vanessa crying, saying you ambushed her, attacked her in her own home. Dug up lies about Vanessa's past. Did I lie about anything, David? Silence on his end, long enough that I knew Helen had confirmed it. You had no right, he finally yelled. You had no right to dig into her private life. I had every right to understand who I've been financially supporting for 2 years. That money was given freely. It was loaned freely, with the understanding it would be repaid. But that's not the issue anymore, is it? What's the issue then, Mom? He snapped. The issue is that your wife deliberately humiliated me at my own party, then lied about it, then sent you to gaslight me, then baked me cookies and continued to lie. She didn't lie. She was embarrassed and said something stupid. David, she told me I looked as cheap as I really am. Her mother heard it and applauded. There was nothing accidental about it. Another silence. Longer this time. Even if that's true, he said, his voice low, going after her family was over the line. I didn't go after anyone. I had a polite conversation with Helen about her daughter's history of marrying men and then bankrupting them. Would you like to hear about James Bradley's experience? Mom, stop. He was a city council member, married Vanessa after a 6-month courtship. Sound familiar? 18 months later, he'd lost his house, his car, and his position. She'd run up $60,000 in debt in his name. You're lying. Marcus Chen lasted 2 years. He declared bankruptcy 6 months after their divorce. She'd gotten access to his business accounts and nearly destroyed his restaurant. Both men filed restraining orders, David. Both tried to press charges for fraud. I heard something crash. He'd thrown something. His coffee mug, probably. My calm, controlled son was having a tantrum. Why are you doing this to us? He choked out. I'm not doing anything to you. I'm trying to save you from making the same mistakes as husbands 1 and 2. Vanessa loves me. Vanessa loves your bank account. And mine. Just like she loved James's political connections and Marcus's restaurant income. You're useful to her. You're wrong. You're bitter and jealous and wrong. That stung, but I'd expected it. David, has Vanessa ever contributed to your joint finances? Real contributions. She works part-time. Her marketing consulting. How much? I don't know the exact amount. Ballpark. Maybe $20,000 a year. Try $11,000, I said. Last year. This year, so far, less than $4,000. And how much of that went into your joint savings versus her personal spending? No answer. David, I'm going to ask you a direct question. If I stopped giving you money tomorrow, could you and Vanessa maintain your current lifestyle? The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. We'd manage, he said finally. Would you? Or would you lose the house I gave you, the cars I helped you buy? That house is ours now. You signed it over. Yes, I did, because you told me it was temporary. That was 3 years ago, David. When, exactly, were you planning to get back on your feet? We've been dealing with a lot of expenses, such as the kitchen renovation. Was that necessary? The old cabinets were falling apart. Those cabinets were 10 years old and in perfect condition. Vanessa wanted granite countertops to match her design magazines. You don't understand what it's like to be married to someone with standards. Standards. As if wanting nice things was the same as having principles. David, I said quietly, I want you to add up everything you two have spent in the past 2 years on non-necessities. The kitchen, the furniture, her clothes, the vacations, all of it. Why? Because I think you'll discover you've been living beyond your means for a long time. And the only reason you haven't noticed is because I've been covering the difference. And what if that's true? If that's true, I said, then you need to decide if you want to be a man who builds his own life or a man who lets his wife spend his mother's money. I hung up. Within an hour, my phone was buzzing. Texts from David, texts from Vanessa, angry, pleading, accusatory. I deleted them all. 3 days of silence. I used the time productively. I met with my financial advisor. I consulted with a lawyer. On Thursday afternoon, my doorbell rang. David and Vanessa, standing on my porch, a united front. They dressed for this. David in his best suit, Vanessa in a conservative navy dress, minimal jewelry. They held a bouquet of tasteful white roses. "Hi, Mom," David said. "We were hoping we could talk." "All three of us," Vanessa added, her voice warm and conciliatory. "I think there's been a lot of miscommunication." I let them in. They settled on my living room couch while I arranged the roses. "Mom," David began, "I want to apologize for losing my temper on the phone. That wasn't fair to you. And I want to apologize for any hurt feelings from the party," Vanessa added. "I've been thinking about what you said you heard, and I realize my words must have sounded different than I intended." What I said, I heard, still maintaining plausible deniability. "I appreciate that," I said, settling into my armchair. "The thing is," David continued, "we've been doing a lot of talking about our finances, about the help you've given us, and we want you to know how grateful we are." "We know 47,000 is a significant amount," David said carefully, "and we want to make things right." "We have a proposal," Vanessa said. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folder, a formal repayment plan. She handed it to me with a proud smile. Inside was a typed document, professionally formatted. "Monthly payment amounts and dates, $200 a month," I read aloud, "for 36 months. $200 a month for 3 years. That's $7,200. They exchanged a look. "It's what we can realistically afford," David explained, "while still maintaining our current obligations." "Your current obligations," I repeated. "Such as?" "The mortgage, obviously," Vanessa said, her smile tightening. "Car payments, insurance, living expenses." "Living expenses," I said. "Would that include your monthly spa appointments, Vanessa? Your shopping trips? The weekly date nights at expensive restaurants?" "We're not asking you to subsidize our lifestyle anymore," Vanessa said carefully. "We're offering to pay back what we owe." "You're offering to pay back $7,200 of a $47,000 debt. At $200 a month with no interest, it would take you almost 20 years to repay me." "Mom," David said slowly, "what exactly are you saying?" "I'm saying your repayment plan is insulting. I'm saying $200 a month doesn't even cover the interest. And I'm saying this entire performance feels less like genuine remorse and more like a negotiating tactic." "Margaret," Vanessa leaned forward, "we're trying to do the right thing here. We could have just ignored the debt entirely, claimed it was all gifts." "How generous of you." "What do you want from us?" David asked, frustration creeping in. "Honesty," I said simply. "Real honesty. Not carefully crafted apologies." "We're being honest," Vanessa protested. "Are you? David, did you tell Vanessa about my conversation with her mother?" His face went pale. He hadn't. "What conversation?" Vanessa asked, her voice sharp. "The one where Helen confirmed your previous marriages, the ones you never mentioned to any of us." Vanessa went still. "That's ancient history." "Is it? Because the pattern seems remarkably consistent. Find a man with resources, marry him, drain his accounts, then move on." "That's not what happened with us," David said, but he sounded less certain. "Isn't it? You've been married 3 years. In that time, Vanessa has contributed virtually nothing to your income while spending nearly $50,000 of my money." "She works," David protested. "Part-time consulting. That brings in, what, $4,000 a year, according to her tax returns? You looked at her tax returns? David's voice was outraged. They're public record if you know where to look. Amazing what becomes available when someone claims business income. Vanessa stood up abruptly. I don't have to listen to this. No, you don't, I agreed. But you might want to, because I haven't finished sharing what I learned about your employment history. She froze. Sit down, Vanessa, both of you. We're going to have that honest conversation now. They sat. For the first time, I had their complete, undivided attention. Vanessa has never held a steady job for more than 18 months, I said. I pulled out another folder, my research. In the past decade, she's worked for 7 different companies in 4 different states. David's face was white. People change jobs. That's normal in marketing. Is it normal to be fired for falsifying expense reports? Because that's what happened at Morrison and Associates in Tennessee. Vanessa's composure cracked. You have no right to contact my former employers. I didn't need to. Wrongful termination lawsuits are public record, especially when they involve allegations of fraud. I spread the documents on the coffee table. Morrison and Associates, fired for submitting fake receipts. Bradley Marketing Solutions in Ohio, terminated for unauthorized use of company credit cards. Thompson Creative in Michigan, let go during a restructuring that happened to coincide with missing petty cash. Those are all lies, Vanessa said, but her voice was shaking. Are they? Because I also found your LinkedIn profile, where you list yourself as having mutually agreed to part ways with each of them. Funny how your version never mentions the theft. David was staring at his wife like he'd never seen her before. Vanessa, please tell me she's making this up. Vanessa turned to him, tears welling in her eyes. Her final card. David, you know who I am. You know I would never do anything dishonest. Your mother is trying to destroy our marriage because she can't stand that you chose me over her. It was a masterful deflection. I chose you over her? David repeated slowly. Vanessa, my mother has given us almost $50,000. How exactly did I choose you? She's controlling, David. Can't you see that? She uses money to manipulate us, to keep us dependent. If I wanted to control you, I said calmly, I would have made the loans contingent on conditions. I would have demanded monthly financial reports. Instead, I wrote checks whenever you asked and never questioned what the money was for. Because you wanted us to owe you, Vanessa shot back. You wanted us to feel guilty. David stood up abruptly, running his hands through his hair. Stop. Both of you. Just stop. He walked to the window, staring out. When he finally turned back, his face looked older. Mom, he said quietly, is everything in these folders true? Yes, all of it. He turned to his wife. Vanessa, I need you to look me in the eye and tell me the truth. Did you steal from your previous employers? David, please. Did you steal from them? She started crying, desperate tears. It wasn't stealing. They were expense reimbursements I was entitled to. The companies were just being petty about documentation. Falsified receipts aren't documentation problems, Vanessa, I said gently. They're fraud. And your previous husbands, David continued, his voice steadier. Did you max out credit cards in their names? We were married. Their money was my money. That's not how marriage works, Vanessa. She looked back and forth between us, finally realizing her charm wasn't going to save her. The mask came off. Fine, Vanessa snapped. Her entire demeanor changed. The tears vanished. Her eyes went cold. Yes, I took money from men who could afford it. Yes, I've made some questionable financial decisions. So what? David recoiled. So what? You benefited too, David. You enjoyed the nice house, the expensive dinners, the luxury lifestyle. You never asked where the money came from because you didn't want to know. I thought it came from my mother, David said quietly. It did come from your mother, Vanessa laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. I just helped you spend it on things that would make us happy, instead of letting her hoard it like some paranoid dragon. That was the moment David finally saw her. He sat back down heavily, his head in his hands. Jesus, Vanessa, what have you done to us? I've given you the best 3 years of your life. You've spent $50,000 of my mother's money and made me complicit in stealing from her. It wasn't stealing, she gave it willingly, because you lied about what it was for. They were screaming at each other now. I sat quietly, watching 38 years of careful parenting. Finally pay off. David was angry, hurt, and confused, but underneath it all, he was still the decent man I'd raised. When the shouting stopped, the silence was deafening. But it doesn't even matter, Vanessa suddenly said, a smug little smile playing on her lips. It's all just public records, right? Hearsay. Old news. Not all of it, I said. I leaned forward. This was my checkmate. My research was just the start. I've also hired a private investigator. David looked up. Vanessa's smile faltered. He's been working for 2 weeks. He's good. He managed to unseal the divorce settlement from husband number 1, the one in Tennessee. He also got a sworn, notarized deposition from the restaurant owner in Ohio, the one whose business you nearly destroyed. You can't, Vanessa whispered. I can. And I did. That file, Vanessa, contains bank records showing direct transfers from his business account to your personal offshore account. It's not just financial impropriety, it's felony wire fraud. I let that sink in. That file, I continued, is my leverage. It's my proof. It's being delivered to me by secure courier. It should arrive tomorrow. Vanessa stared at me, her face pale. She was cornered. Now, I said, we're going to talk about a real repayment plan, and we're going to talk about what you're going to tell my son. Or tomorrow, I'm going to turn that file over to the police. David looked at his wife. Vanessa? She didn't answer. She just grabbed her purse and stormed out of the house, slamming the door so hard a picture fell off the wall. David just stood there, staring at the door. Mom, he finally said, his voice a whisper. What happens now? Now, I said. You decide what kind of man you want to be. David left an hour later, looking like a ghost. He said he needed to think. He said he needed to go home and look at their own finances. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the living room, waiting. The courier service said the package would arrive by 10 a.m. At 9 a.m., I was in the kitchen making coffee. I heard the mail slot. I went to the front door, just junk mail. At 10:15 a.m., I called the courier service. Yes, Mrs. Thompson, the dispatcher said. Our records show that package was signed for at 8:52 a.m. today. What? No. I've been here all morning. No one rang the bell. Ma'am, the driver's log says the package was signed for by V. Thompson, a blonde woman. She was waiting on the porch, said you were in the shower and had asked her to sign for it. My blood ran cold. Vanessa. She hadn't gone home. She'd been waiting. I ran to my office. My desk drawer, where I kept my spare key, was slightly open. She'd come in the house while I was sleeping. She'd checked my desk, found my calendar with the note, PI file, 10 a.m. She hadn't just intercepted the package. She'd been in my home. I sat down, my hands shaking. The file was gone. The deposition, the unsealed records, my leverage, my proof. It was all gone. The doorbell rang. I looked through the peephole. It was David and Vanessa. Vanessa was standing behind him, a smug, triumphant smirk on her face. She was holding the stolen, ripped-open courier envelope in her hand. I opened the door. Mom, David started. He looked confused, angry. Vanessa just showed me this empty envelope. She said you've been harassing her, that you hired someone to dig up dirt, and when he found nothing, you threatened her. She told me you tried to blackmail her, David said, his voice pleading. Tell me it's not true. Vanessa stepped forward, patting David's arm. "It's okay, honey. She's just lashing out. She's upset about the money." She looked at me, her eyes glittering with victory. "You have nothing, Margaret. All that talk about wire fraud and depositions? Just a sad, desperate bluff from a lonely old woman. You have nothing." She'd destroyed the evidence, and she'd convinced David I was a liar. "David," I said, my voice shaking with rage, "she waited on my porch this morning. She forged my signature and stole my mail. That is a federal crime." "Or," Vanessa countered smoothly, "the courier gave it to me by mistake. I opened it and found it was empty, just a bunch of blank paper. Your PI must have conned you, Margaret. Took your money and sent you nothing." She had an answer for everything. "You really think I have nothing?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "I know you don't," Vanessa smiled. "You're right. I don't have the file. You stole it. But you made one mistake. You thought I needed paper." I turned to my son. "David, your wife was fired from Morrison and Associates, badge number 4492, on June 14, 2017, for falsifying $11,200 in expense reports. Her manager was a man named Arthur Vance." Vanessa's smile twitched. "She was terminated from Bradley Marketing on March 30th, 2019, for charging $22,000 in personal items, including a vacation to Aruba, to the company Amex. The card number ended in 38. Her supervisor was a woman named Cynthia Carr." "Stop it," Vanessa hissed. "Husband number 1, James Bradley. Divorce finalized May 8, 2018. Case number 33D901. He declared bankruptcy on November 20th, 2018, citing $64,000 in credit card debt accrued by you, in his name, without his knowledge. Husband number 2, Marcus Chen. Restraining order filed August 3, 2020. You transferred $80,000 from his restaurant's operating account, Chen's Kitchen LLC, to an offshore account in the Caymans. Act number 4402-991B. I recited it from memory. I had spent 3 days memorizing every detail in that file. Vanessa stared at me, her face white. You, she stammered. "You thought I'd just let the paper do the talking." I stepped towards her. "You thought I was that stupid? You thought I was that weak?" David was looking at her. "Vanessa, is that true? The account number. How does she know the account number?" Vanessa finally, completely snapped. "So what if it is?" she screamed. The mask was gone. This was the real Vanessa. "Fine, yes. I took the money. From all of them. From stupid, weak men who didn't deserve it. Men like you." She jabbed a finger at David. "You think you're any different. You're the weakest of them all. You've been letting your mommy pay your bills for 3 years. You enjoyed the nice house, the expensive dinners, the new car. You never asked where the money came from because you didn't want to know." David recoiled as if she'd slapped him. "I gave you the best years of your life," she shrieked at him. "And this is how you repay me? By siding with her?" She turned to me, her eyes filled with pure hatred. You did this! You interfering old bitch! You ruined everything!" She raised her hand to strike me. David grabbed her wrist. He didn't say a word. He just looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time. He saw the woman who had bankrupted 2 other men. He saw the woman who had stolen from her employers. He saw the woman who had stolen my mail. He saw the woman who had just admitted to it all. He dropped her wrist. "Get out," he whispered. "What?" "Get out of my mother's house. Get out of my house. Get your things. I want you gone by the time I get back." "David, baby." Her tone shifted, becoming soft, pleading. "Get out." He turned and walked away from her, toward his car without looking back. Vanessa watched him go. Then she turned back to me. Her face was a mask of pure fury. "This isn't over," she whispered. "I won't let you win. I'll destroy you. I'll destroy you both." She ran from my porch, got in her car, and tore off down the street. The divorce papers were filed 6 weeks later. David moved back in with me. Temporarily, he said, just until I figure out what to do with the house. But I knew he needed more than a place to stay. He needed to remember who he was. Living with my adult son again was strange. He was quiet, withdrawn. He spent hours on the phone with lawyers, with banks, trying to untangle the mess. Vanessa had been true to her word. The day he asked for the divorce, she cleaned out their joint savings account. Every penny. "I feel like such an idiot," he said one evening over dinner. "How did I not see it?" "Because you're a decent person," I replied. "Decent people have trouble recognizing predators. We don't think like they do. But the signs were all there. The spending, the lies, the way she treated you." He pushed food around his plate. "God, Mom, the way she treated you. I let her humiliate you at your own party." "Yes, you did." He looked up, startled by my bluntness. "You let her treat me badly for 3 years," I continued. "You prioritized her feelings over mine, her wants over my needs, her version of events over my experiences. And when I finally fought back, your first instinct was to defend her." "I know. I'm sorry." "Sorry isn't enough, David. Sorry is what you say when you accidentally hurt someone. What you did was systematic. You chose her over and over, even when she was obviously in the wrong." He set down his fork, tears in his eyes. "How do I fix that?" "You can't. You can only learn from it and do better." A week later, the harassment started. My tires were slashed. My garden, the one Robert and I had built, was trampled, the rose bushes ripped out of the ground. Then came the phone calls, blocked numbers. 3 in the morning. I'd answer and hear nothing but breathing. Then a click. I installed security cameras. I changed my locks. "Mom," David said, "about the money, the $47,000, I want to pay it back, all of it, with interest." "With what? She cleaned out your accounts." "I'll get a second job. I'll sell the house. Whatever it takes, I have to. For my own self-respect." That, I understood. "All right. We'll work out reasonable terms." I saw a glimpse of the young man I'd raised. The one with integrity who'd gotten lost. The fire started at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. The smoke detector screamed, jolting me from a deep sleep. I stumbled out of bed and saw an orange glow outside my window. Flames were climbing up the side of the house. "David!" I screamed, pounding on his door. "David, fire!" I fumbled with my phone, dialing 911. "Fire department, what's your emergency?" "My house is on fire, 1247 Maple Street." David appeared beside me, wearing boxers, his hair sticking up. "Mom, we need to get out. Now!" We ran through the house. We grabbed nothing. Outside, we stood on the sidewalk in our pajamas, watching flames dance across the roof of the home I'd lived in for 32 years. The fire department arrived in minutes, but the damage was extensive. My bedroom, the guest room, most of the upstairs hall, gone. "Any idea how it started?" the fire chief asked after the blaze was under control. "None," I said. But I had a very strong suspicion. "We'll investigate," he said, his face grim. "But I can tell you it started outside, near the back porch. Looks like someone doused the exterior wall with an accelerant. Arson." David and I exchanged a look. Someone had deliberately set my house on fire. The next few hours were a blur. Insurance calls, police reports. By noon, we were in a generic hotel room, drinking bad coffee. "It was her, wasn't it?" David said. "It wasn't a question." "We can't know that for sure, David." "Mom, who else would do this? The slashed tires, the phone calls, and now this? It's her." My phone rang. "Detective Williams," the caller ID said. The officer who'd taken our statement. "Mrs. Thompson, we've made an arrest in connection with your house fire." My heart stopped. "Vanessa?" "No, ma'am. A man named Tony Martinez. Small-time criminal. Got a record for arson for hire. We caught him on a traffic camera near your neighborhood around midnight." He reeked of gasoline. Did he say who hired him?" "He's not talking yet, but we're working on it. In the meantime, I'd recommend you and your son stay somewhere safe. If someone hired him, they might try again." Tony Martinez. I'd never heard the name. Vanessa knows people, David said, his voice dark. She knows all kinds of unsavory people. The hotel phone rang. David answered it. Hello? His face went white. No, absolutely not. Don't call here again. He slammed the phone down. He looked at me, panic in his eyes. That was Vanessa. She knows we're staying here. How? I don't know. She said she wanted to meet, to talk about our mutual problem. She said she heard about the fire and knows we're trying to frame her for it. The audacity. She burns down my house, then calls to suggest we're framing her. David, pack your things, we're leaving. Now, where are we going? Somewhere she can't find us. As we threw our few belongings into bags, my cell phone rang. Unknown number. I ignored it. It rang again. Different, unknown number. It rang a third time. I answered. Hello? Margaret Thompson, you interfering old... It was Vanessa. Her voice was slurred, drunk, or just high on her own rage. If you're recording this, Vanessa, you should know the police are already investigating. They've arrested the man who set the fire. Good luck proving I had anything to do with it, she shrieked. Tony Martinez might have something to say about that. Silence. A long, stunned silence. You destroyed my life, she finally whispered. You destroyed your own life, Vanessa. I just documented it. I loved David. I gave him everything. You gave him nothing but lies and debt. He was happy with me. He was miserable. He just didn't realize it until I showed him the truth. She started crying. Harsh, ragged sobs that sounded more like rage than grief. I won't let you win, she whispered. I won't let you take everything from me. The line went dead. We drove for 6 hours. We stopped at a small motel outside Asheville. David paid cash and registered under his middle name. The room was clean but sparse. 2 double beds, a view of the parking lot. David immediately started making calls. To his office, to the insurance company, to Detective Williams, reporting Vanessa's threatening call. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my hands. My house was half destroyed. A stranger was in jail for it, and my ex-daughter-in-law was making increasingly erratic threats. I felt strangely calm. Mom? David hung up. Are you okay? You seem quiet. I'm fine. Just thinking. About what? About how liberating it is to finally stop pretending. About how much energy I've wasted trying to keep peace with people who didn't deserve it. I'm thinking Vanessa made a strategic error. What do you mean? She escalated this to a criminal level. As long as it was just family drama, financial manipulation, even theft, it could be handled. But arson changes everything. Now the police are involved. Insurance companies are paying attention. There's a paper trail. My phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. I see you. David read it over my shoulder. That's it. I'm calling Detective Williams again. While he made the call, my phone rang. Another unknown number. I was about to ignore it, but something made me answer. Hello? Margaret? Margaret, is that you? The voice was thin, terrified. It took me a second to place it. Helen? Oh God, Margaret, she's lost her mind. She's completely lost her mind. She was sobbing, hysterical. Helen, slow down. What are you talking about? Vanessa, she came here last night. She was ranting about the fire. She said, I taught her a lesson she'll never forget. My blood ran cold. Helen, what did she tell you? She was drunk, bragging. She said she met some man at a bar, a Tony something. She paid him $5,000. David stopped his call, staring at me, listening. Helen, I said, keeping my voice calm. This is very important. Did she say how she paid him? Cash. She was furious. She said she had to pull it from her emergency account, the one she's been hiding from David. She showed me the withdrawal slip. She was waving it in my face, bragging about how smart she was. Helen, where is that account? I don't know. Some online bank. But she left the slip. She was so drunk she dropped it in my living room. I found it this morning after she left. Margaret, what do I do? She's crazy. She tried to kill you. She'll come after me next for knowing." Helen wasn't just an ally. She was a terrified eyewitness, and she had the final piece of the puzzle. "Helen," I said, "I need you to do two things. First, lock your doors. Do not answer them for anyone. Second, I'm going to give you a phone number. It's for Detective Williams. Tell him exactly what you just told me. Tell him about the withdrawal slip." I gave her the number. She was still sobbing when I hung up. I looked at David. I think it's over." "What did she say?" "She said Vanessa confessed, and she has the bank receipt to prove it." My phone rang again, almost immediately. It was Detective Williams. "Mrs. Thompson, I just got a call from a Ms. Helen Roberts. She's very cooperative. The information she provided about a $5,000 cash withdrawal matches what we've been able to pull from Mr. Martinez. He's decided to cooperate fully in exchange for a deal. He just identified your daughter-in-law from a photo lineup." I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. "We are issuing a warrant for the arrest of Vanessa Thompson," the detective said, "for conspiracy to commit arson in the first degree." The courthouse steps were crawling with reporters 6 months later. The story of the vindictive daughter-in-law who tried to burn down her ex-mother-in-law's house had captured the public imagination. I walked through the crowd with my head high, David's hand steady on my elbow. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Vanessa sat at the defendant's table. She'd lost weight. Her lawyer had styled her to look younger, more vulnerable. She wore a simple pale blue suit. When she turned to glance at us, her eyes held pure hatred. The prosecution laid out its case. Tony Martinez testified. He said Vanessa had approached him at Murphy's bar, offering him $5,000 to teach an old woman a lesson. "She was real specific," Martinez said, chewing gum on the stand. "She wanted it to look accidental but cause maximum damage. She said, 'I don't want anyone hurt, I just want to scare them. Make them understand they can't mess with me.'" Vanessa's lawyer tried to paint him as a career criminal, a liar trading a story for a reduced sentence. But then came the bank records. The $5,000 cash withdrawal from Vanessa's secret online account, made the day before she met Martinez. Then the security footage from the bar, showing them together in a dark corner. Then the recording of her threatening phone call to the hotel. The jury listened, rapt, as Vanessa's voice, thick with rage, echoed through the courtroom. "I won't let you win." But the final nail in her coffin was the unexpected ally. "The prosecution calls Helen Roberts," the DA announced. Vanessa's head snapped up. She stared at her mother with sheer panic. Helen walked to the stand, shaking. She looked at Vanessa, then quickly looked away. "Mrs. Roberts," the prosecutor began gently, "can you tell us about the visit you received from your daughter on the night of the fire?" Helen, in a small, terrified voice, recounted everything: the bragging, the confession, the $5,000. "And this," the prosecutor said, holding up a plastic evidence bag, "is this the withdrawal slip you found after she left?" "Yes," Helen whispered. Vanessa's lawyer was brutal. "Mrs. Roberts, isn't it true you hate your daughter? That you were jealous of her? No, that's not true. Isn't it true you're testifying here today to save yourself? That you're worried about being an accessory? That you'd say anything to protect yourself?" "No," Helen cried. She tried to kill them. She's not the woman I raised. She's a monster." When Vanessa took the stand, she was masterful. Tears flowed. Her voice broke. She painted herself as the victim. "Margaret Thompson destroyed my marriage," she testified, looking at the jury. "She couldn't stand that David loved me more than her. She dug into my past, twisted my mistakes. She turned my husband against me. I was desperate, heartbroken, not thinking clearly." "And did you tell Mr. Martinez to burn down her house?" her lawyer asked. "No, never," she insisted. "I may have vented my frustrations to a stranger in a bar. I may have said I wished Margaret would understand how much she'd hurt me, but I never asked anyone to commit arson." It was a compelling performance. If I hadn't lived it, I might have believed her. But the jury had heard it all. The bank slip, the arsonist, the hotel recording, and the mother. The jury returned after only 2 days. On the count of arson in the first degree, how do you find? Guilty. On the count of conspiracy to commit arson, how do you find? Guilty. On the count of making terroristic threats, how do you find? Guilty. On the count of criminal harassment, how do you find? Guilty. The judge sentenced her to 12 years in state prison with the possibility of parole in 8. As the bailiff led Vanessa away in handcuffs, she turned. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at David. She locked eyes with her mother. The mask was completely gone. Her face was contorted with a fury so profound it was terrifying. "You!" she screamed at Helen. "You did this! You rotten—" The bailiff pushed her through the courtroom doors, her curses echoing behind her. She had finally met a situation where her looks and her lies couldn't save her. Outside, reporters swarmed us. "Mrs. Thompson, how does it feel? Do you feel safe now?" "I feel relieved," I said simply. Justice was served. But the real victory wasn't Vanessa's conviction. It was the fact that my son was standing beside me, his hand on my arm, finally understanding what I'd been trying to protect him from all along. 6 months later, David and I stood in the rebuilt section of my house. The insurance had paid for it all. The new bedroom was brighter, more modern. It would take time before it felt like home, but it was a start. "I never thanked you properly," David said, looking out the new window. "For what?" "For saving me from her, for refusing to give up, even when I fought you every step of the way." I looked at my son. The past year had aged him, but it had also strengthened him. He'd sold the house. He'd moved into a modest apartment. He'd started therapy. Most importantly, he'd paid back every single penny of the $47,000. "You saved yourself, David," I told him. "I just gave you the information you needed." "Still, I'm sorry it took me so long to listen." "Sometimes," I said, "we have to lose everything to understand what we actually value." My phone buzzed, a text from Helen Roberts. She'd reached out periodically, offering apologies I'd largely ignored. This one was different. "Vanessa asked me to tell you she's sorry for everything. She's in a program. She says she knows she was wrong." I showed the text to David. He shook his head. "Even now," he said, "she's trying to manipulate people, trying to manipulate her." "Probably," I said. "But you know what? It doesn't matter anymore." And it didn't. Vanessa was in prison. David had learned his lesson, and I was living my life on my own terms. I discovered that standing up for yourself, even when it's painful, is infinitely better than accepting mistreatment for the sake of peace. My house was rebuilt. My relationship with my son was stronger, and I'd learned something valuable about my own strength. Sometimes the wine stain ruins the dress, but it also reveals who people really are underneath. And sometimes that revelation is exactly what everyone needed to see. 6 months after the trial, I threw another birthday party, my 65th. This time, I wore a simple black dress that cost $50. I invited only a handful of people, my oldest friends and my son. David gave a toast. It wasn't about family or gratitude. It was about second chances and hard-won wisdom. Nobody spilled wine on me, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.